Secretary Pompeo is asking all nations around the world to help defend those waters. Steve, Brian Ainsley.
All right, Aisha, thank you very much.
Yeah, everyone's got skin in the game. Why should we just be the only ones using our Navy? You know?
Well, what's interesting about this, and I like the fact that she framed it, there will be talks with the United States and North Korea. That's the plan. This is just some more of that maximum pressure stuff that we've seen from both sides in the past. What's interesting about this time is there's no belligerent talk from North Korea toward the United States, as we've seen repeatedly.
Yeah, the president's got this policy of underreacting. They almost want to provoke us into doing something. Yeah. So we seem to be underreacting, and I know on some things he overreacts, some things he underreacts.
Last night he was reacting to the Mueller investigation. He was on with Sean Hannity, and he was saying that this was not true. It was a witch hunt, that he's been dealing with this basically his entire presidency. Here's a little bit of his interview with Sean reacting to Mueller being in the congressional hearings. Listen to this.
This was a fake witch hunt, and it should never be allowed to happen to another president again. This was treason. This was high crimes. They create this phony crime, and then they say he obstructed. They said there was no collusion, but he obstructed. The crime was committed on the other side, and we'll find out about that. We have a great attorney general who's looking at it. I've been hearing a lot of the media actually is talking about investigate the investigators, and a lot more than that. I think a lot of good is going to come out of it.
Look, Robert Mueller said, I can't talk about Christopher Steele and Fusion GPS because of something else, like an investigation, the inspector general, like an attorney general. So we should be interested in to find out the role of Christopher Steele. Was he given bad information from disinformation from Russia to feed to us? So I think there's a lot of unwinding. The question is, will other media outlets cover this? Or will they just ignore it and focus on, I don't know, the economy?
Well, they had put all their stock in, first of all, the Mueller report, and then it came out, and it's like, oh, we got to hear from him. And then we heard from him, and it was a disaster. There's an item in the Washington Post that says that the House Intel and Judiciary Committees both felt blindsided, that nobody warned them how much Mueller had aged, and they were regretful that they forced a decorated Vietnam War veteran to testify in front of their committee, something he did not want to do.
Well, he didn't want to do it, but now that portion has been completed, now many people want to find out the origin of this. How did this all happen? And Sean last night was asking the president about this. He said, you have the power to release the FISA applications. You have the power to release classified FBI interviews. And he said that Bill Barr has all of that information. He says he's a very respected gentleman. He's a high quality person, and he is working hard. He says he has all of it. He gave him a total release. So hopefully we'll figure out the origins of all of this.
I bet the declassification comes sooner than later.
Well, and by the way, see, you look at Robert Mueller. He's in between Bernie Sanders, who's got a ton of energy, and President Trump, who's got a ton of energy. So I don't know why we have to tell Democrats or Republicans that Robert Mueller's getting older. We know. So is there a briefing you could have done behind the scenes? Perhaps. But in the end, he said he didn't want to talk anymore. And it was pretty obvious after his 9-minute press conference that he was pretty shaky.
Well, what was shocking to so many people is he simply did not have a lot of answers. And it became clear that the Mueller investigation was driven by the staff. He was a figurehead. And in fact, that is kind of how the media montage that you're about to see is changed the narrative that, oh, maybe he wasn't running the show. Maybe he was just the guy whose name was on everything.
I love montages.
Mueller hearings did not deliver the kind of punch they were hoping for to start impeachment proceedings.
Long-awaited but low-key appearance by Robert Mueller.
Because of that performance from Mueller, I think that lights a fire under the need to speak to the people on his team who actually did the work beyond the sort of distant figurehead figure of Mueller himself.
There's that figurehead word again, and that's something Don Trump Jr. mentioned last night.
I think the American people finally saw it, that this man who was the lead of the largest investigation in American history, really the largest hoax at this point. Ultimately, I think the American public saw that he was put in there as a figurehead because he was the former leader of the FBI, he was a decorated Marine, and that he would do what's right. But no one's talking about this guy put in 19 leftist Hillary Clinton donor lawyers. They worked on the Clinton campaign. He had no idea who was running the ship.
Adam Schiff, by the way, and Jerry Nadler, if they had their druthers, they'd move ahead with any type of impeachment talk. Nancy Pelosi saying, do what you want, but you have to be respectful of others, for example, in Trump-won districts that don't want any part of it. And if they do push impeachment, they lose their seat.
Yeah, she had a morning meeting yesterday with all the Democrats, and she said, listen, if you are supporting impeachment, don't disparage anyone else in our party who is not for it.
Joy Behar had an observation in the wake of the Mueller testimony, and that was that Republicans were very disrespectful to a veteran.
Oh.
They were very disrespectful, I thought, the Republicans. They have a tendency to be disrespectful to veterans in this country. It really is upsetting. I don't want to hear the Republicans say that they are the most patriotic party anymore. I don't want to hear it. Or family values as long as they're locking up children. I don't want to hear it anymore.
And tell that to, she telling that to Dan Abrams? What is Dan Abrams going to do about it? It's an interesting show they have.
Here's the thing about the Mueller testimony. He did not want to be there. It was the Democrats who forced him to show up and appear before
I think
two
everyone
committees.
is grateful to our military. Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter. That's bipartisan.
Right.
We all love our military. This has nothing to do with his service. He's a decorated veteran. We applaud him for that. We are grateful to him for that.
A presidency's on the line of the most powerful position in the world, which has been under attack for 2.5 years. If you can't ask the head of that committee for direct questions, that's not disrespect. I don't know what, again, as usual,
That's what spinning looks like. That's what spinning looks like, Brian.
All right, I'm just picking this up for the first time. I forgot Joy Behar was on that show.
The reason that they even called him out is they were trying to score points against the president, trying to make the case for impeachment. Now the House Democrats are struggling with what their next move is. According to the papers out of Washington this morning, liberal groups are just furious with Nancy Pelosi that she has been unable to make anything stick. Right now, there are 98 Democrats who back impeachment. That is 42% of their caucus. And there are a number of centrist Democrats who say, look, this was a dud. Let's move on. But to your point earlier, with Nancy Pelosi trying to figure out what to do, the last thing she needs is for some very vocal members of the Democratic caucus to badmouth moderates.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, who are we talking about? Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. The exact quote is this. This is according to people behind the scenes. She said, do what you have to do for your districts, but don't disparage those who are not for it. The source says, recalling Pelosi's remarks, she said not to make it a thing about their patriotism or lack thereof if they are not for it. Well, maybe that'll come up today when she meets with AOC behind closed doors.
Maybe.
That'll be kind of interesting. And I'm sure she won't.
That's right. The meeting's today.
Yeah, one thing is for certain, she won't listen.
Well, there is one thing that was very interesting yesterday, I believe it was. Adam Schiff said, you know, he watched it all play out the day before on Capitol Hill. He said right now, at this point, the only way Donald Trump is leaving office at this point is him being voted out.
Yeah,
so
the old-fashioned way.
Impeachment thing, didn't really talk about
I have something else to say. Evidently, they called out us because we were talking about waiting and wait staff. AOC called us out. They're saying Fox and Friends that she has more experience as a waiter or a bartender than we do. I would challenge her. I think I'm a better waiter than she is a bartender, and I'm willing to take her on. She called us out because we were talking about weights and tipping and everything.
You were a good bartender?
No, I thought I was an exceptional waiter. I think
I was too.
You were too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we should actually see who is better in a charity square-off.
Like the waiter games.
Yeah, the waiter games. Why not?
What made you good?
But I think I was
gave them
efficient. I
extras?
consolidated steps. I didn't panic under fire. I was always willing to take a table, and I was always willing to clean up in the end.
Did you ever have waitstaff nightmares? I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I forgot to take the appetizer. Oh, thank goodness that's a dream.
Oh, absolutely. You go to sleep and your head keeps spinning.
You know what made me good? I was nice to everyone, so I got really good tips for that, especially when I waited tables up north, because it was a little different, in the South Africa.
We tend to be abrasive.
What I was willing to get yelled at by the chef. Remember when you had to go in the back and say, "Can we make a change? Do you mind not putting cheese on the macaroni or whatever?" And you know, I don't want changes. I know, but please do it this one time.
Right.
If I was willing to get yelled at by the chef, I better get a good tip.
Right. And the chefs are very, very short-tempered.
Did you wait tables? Yeah. What is that about?
He was a farmer.
I was a bartender for a while.
See, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I can make like one drink.
So maybe after the meeting with Nancy Pelosi, AOC could have the waiter game.
We should do it for charity. Let's see.
Okay, can I clarify something that I said yesterday about the president being indicted? A president can be indicted when he leaves office. I know that. I was questioning whether this president will be indicted based on the Mueller report. That's it. All right, let's hand it over to Jillian for some headlines. Hey, Jillian.
Who was also a waiter at one point.
Thank you.
Were you really?
You will participate too.
Did
you ever have the nightmares?
I was just bad. I'm not going to lie. I was not a great server. It's fine, though.
Okay, so AOC's got you on that one.
Yeah, I think so. Let's start off with this headline that we've been following right now, because we are learning more this morning about what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, found nearly unconscious on the floor of his jail cell. Investigators think the disgraced financier was attacked and that an ex-cop being held in the same unit, not the same cell though, is the one who did it. Originally, there was suspicion Epstein tried to injure himself, but focus has shifted to Nicholas Tartaglione. Tartaglione facing the death penalty for 4 drug-related murders. The New York Post reporting when Epstein was found in his cell, Tartaglione had earbuds in. He said he didn't see or hear anything. A wake will be held for murdered college student Ali Castile today. The services come just one day after friends gathered for a vigil at the 21-year-old's former high school in St. Louis. Classmates and teachers calling her a ray of sunshine.
She said the silliest stuff, she did the most adventurous stuff. I will just cherish, I know we all will, every moment, every second that we spent with her.
Police believe Ali was shot and killed by classmate Brandon Thiesfeld. He is now behind bars. Ali's funeral is tomorrow. The House passing a bipartisan bill to raise spending caps and suspend the debt ceiling. It includes budget gains for military programs in the U.S. and overseas. It also adds $320 billion to federal spending over 2 years. President Trump tweeting, quote, "Great for our military and our vets. A big thank you." It now heads to the Senate. The president is expected to sign it if it passes. And right now, a SpaceX rocket is on its
coal miners and coal companies out of business.
Well, she didn't, and she lost. And now business in coal country is actually booming.
Yup, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice, a former Democrat, just celebrated with President Trump, and he joins us live next.
Ago now, and you think, what was she thinking at the time? Because that was not helpful in West Virginia for her.
No, it surely wasn't helpful. I don't think she was thinking, and I'm just really happy that to God above that a whole bunch of coal miners helped put her out of business. That was the very best thing that could happen to this country.
Let's look at some of the economic data for your state. Right now, it's really good. First quarter of 2009, personal income growth is up. 5.6%, GDP growth 5.2%. And then you compare that to 3 years ago when she made those comments, personal income growth was 0.3%. And the GDP, gross domestic product growth, was a negative 2.5%. How did West Virginia turn it around?
Well, Steve, it's a lot of hard work. I'll tell you the honest truth. You know, the media doesn't have any idea how to take President Trump and myself. We're business people. We came there to serve. We're not lifer politicians that have just sucked off the people of the country over and over and everything. But we're different. We're creative. We've made payrolls. You know, in West Virginia, when I walked in the door, we were dead last. And now, you know, just think of all, can you imagine in West Virginia, we were first in construction jobs, we were second in revenue, we were first in personal income growth, first now in GDP. I mean, we're rolling, but there's a lot of things that are going on in West Virginia today. We're proud to have our miners back to work, but we've got tourism, manufacturing, and, you know, we've got roads, construction stuff that's going on, lots of stuff.
Well, the Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, put out a tweet and it said, congratulations again to West Virginia and West Virginia Governor, that's you, for not only having the fastest state personal income growth in the first quarter, but also the fastest state GDP growth coming in at, as I said, 5.2%. How critical, Governor, to this turnaround was the president saying, I'm going to help put those miners back to work, and he followed through on that promise?
Well, he surely did. You know, this president is remarkable, and he's done an incredible amount of stuff in every way. You know, but on top of that, I mean, just think back, Steve, when Mueller was on center stage. I mean, the man looked like a raccoon. If you'd look at his eyes, he looked like a raccoon that had been chased by a pack of hounds and was worn out and up a tree and didn't know where he was.
He was having a bad day.
And that man... and not only that, but that is the man that put the president through what we've gone through for almost 2 years. I mean, it is absolutely terrible. But this president is a remarkable man.
You know, after the testimony that Mr. Mueller made, he flew to West Virginia, and you were able to talk to the president. What did he say behind the scenes after the Mueller testimony?
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, you know, it's almost like he knew what was coming, but you know, he thought it was pitiful. I mean, he thinks it's just this. He thinks it's that we have the gift to be able to take advantage of a man that has incredible experience. Right. I face the same thing every day. You know, the media doesn't understand. You know, you've got people that have made payrolls and know what to do. But this man, you know, he was hopeful that some way, somehow, we'd now come to our senses and put something behind us and get on with things like a national infrastructure program and on and on.
Well, no doubt about it. He would like to turn the page. Governor, thank you very much for joining us live, telling us about the great story of West Virginia, the Mountain State. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.
All right. 6:24 here in New York City. President Trump says we will overcome the crisis with opioids.
We will defeat this opioid epidemic. We are going to overcome addiction. We are currently dealing with the worst drug crisis in American history. Working together, we will defeat this opioid epidemic. We are going to overcome addiction in America.
And now some progress. We might be getting closer. A total number of drug overdose deaths dropped 5% last year, the first decline since the year of 1990. This issue is personal to our next guest, a Fox News regular, you see him all around, who experienced firsthand the impact of addiction and the impact on its family and the relationship, in your case, Gianno Caldwell, with your mom. First off, good news on the opioid epidemic. That is the challenge of these times, correct?
That is correct, and I'm so thankful for what President Trump has done. You know, talking about this is a very emotional topic for me because from my early childhood into my adult years, my 20s, I was robbed of one of the most important and precious relationships a human being can have on this earth, and that's a relationship with my mother. The thief that stole our relationship was pills, marijuana, and crack cocaine, and I'm not alone. Millions of Americans have also faced this same drug demon. And certainly, I'm thankful that after all the time and all of the millions, and not rather millions of lives that have been impacted, and from 1999 to 2017, over 700,000 people have died from overdosing on a drug. I'm happy to say that there's been a reduction, which I think is something that we need. We need to go further, certainly, but I'm thankful for President Trump making this a central campaign promise in 2016 and committing $3.3 billion in funding to the states in the form of grants to provide this reduction.
Yeah, I mean, opioids is the challenge now. A lot of it came from painkillers and overprescription from doctors, and that whether Big Pharma was behind it. But what you're talking about is really the crack epidemic, and that's what got your mom. You talk about it in your book, going down the road.
Pills, marijuana, and crack cocaine.
Yeah, you're going down the road and seeing your mom on the street while you drive with one of your grandparents, correct?
Yeah, so when I was, and that's actually what propelled me to politics. I talk about in my book, Taking for Granted How Conservatism Can Win Back the Americans That Liberalism Failed. My grandfather, who I saw almost every weekend, he was in plumbing construction business. We were riding through an area of Chicago called Inglewood, one of the hardest hit areas in terms of the violence today. And I see a lady who I just knew was my mom. She looked drugged up and beat down. And as we're riding by, I noticed that it wasn't her. And I mentioned to my grandfather what I had just seen, and he told me, after I asked, what can I do to prevent this type of thing from happening? He said it was the elected officials that can provide stronger penalties of law for those who sell and distribute drugs, and they can provide grant funding for those who want to be rehabilitated. And from that point, the very next week, I started volunteering for my local alderman. This led to a life of public service because I thought I was literally saving my mother. I wrote this book, Taken for Granted, because I know after having grown up with a grandmother in extreme poverty where the lights and gas and water was off at the same time, and seeing seeing what the liberal government officials wanted to do, keeping us trapped in a cycle of dependency and victimhood. I wrote this book because I know that our elected officials, whether you be white, black, or indifferent, has taken us all from granted. Whether you be on the south side of Chicago or you be in the Appalachian region and you're poor, white, working class, they've taken us for granted. Whether they've lied to us, as the elites normally have in the Democratic Party, saying that the coal jobs would never come back, the factory jobs would never come back, unemployment in the African American community will always be high. They lied to us. Right. We're seeing a change in that dynamic right now, and I'm thankful that I had people like you, Brian Kilmeade, who's endorsed my book, Ann Coulter, Ben Shapiro, Newt Gingrich, and I encourage everyone to go to my site, GiannoCaldwell.com, and pre-order the book there. Also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Gianno Caldwell.
So, Gianno, here's an excerpt from the book. It's called, and here we go. It says, "My core principles are what saved me from becoming a statistic. The same conservative values that have saved hundreds of millions, whether they know it or not, and still draw people from around the world to the U.S. every single day." And you get pushback within the black community, but you did your research. You knew that when Republicans sided, were pushing for the abolition of slavery, they were called radical Republicans, and there was huge pushback then. You were almost surprised to go back and look in history and see how the parties have flipped labels.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. The term black Republican, in fact, was a negative term pushed onto Republicans because Democrats thought that white Republicans were doing too much for the African Americans. We talk about the fact that the 1964 Civil Rights Act, or pretty much any civil rights bill that was ever pushed, was actually pushed by way of Republican support. Even the one that LBJ was a part of, the Senate Democrats, they didn't want to support it, and it was the Republicans in the Senate that made it happen. So yeah, I was misinformed coming up in the community in which I was, but there's so many other individuals that are misinformed. Right. And I wrote this book to check those fallacies and false narratives, expose them.
And Gianno comes out in November. I had a chance to read it. It's excellent. Gianno Caldwell, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up straight ahead.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Democrats say border detention centers are cruel. But we're getting an inside look at one of the largest ICE facilities in the nation. None other than Griff Jenkins is live with a Fox News exclusive. Griff?
Brian, those that have protested ICE facilities, that want to abolish ICE, claim that detainees are mistreated, that in these facilities they lack resources. Well, we'll take you inside for a rare look and let you decide for yourself when we come back.
Colleagues have ideas. I may disagree with those ideas, but put a bill up. That's what Congress is supposed to do.
Yeah, do something. Yeah, they want the issue. They want the issue of the president not treating illegal immigrants in a manner that is emblematic of something that they want.
So that was Doug Collins. He's ranking member on House Judiciary from the great state of Georgia. He was there saying, look, in the middle of his opening statements, he stopped. He said, you know what, I'm just going to stop right here. Instead of talking and talking and talking, let's pass something. Let's deal with family separation the way that our constituents want us to, and let's pass some bills.
Exactly. And so put up a bill. And how many times have we heard the president say, hey, Congress, do something. Pass a bill to close the loopholes and do something about amnesty. We're going to talk to Matthew Albence, the acting ICE director. He's going to be with us in a little bit, and we'll ask him about his impression regarding Mr. Collins yesterday.
It's so depressing because it is like if you're a firefighter seeing a whole neighborhood on fire, and instead of turning on your hose when you arrive, you check your watch and say, my shift is over. They are going on vacation for 6 weeks and leaving Border Patrol with this crisis.
We're standing there and watching the fire burn and just have a conversation instead of picking up the hose and doing something about it.
They could act. They could act. They could stay throughout the weekend. They could stay there until they get something done. There's 4 asylum fixes. Democrats could get what they want in terms for the Republicans fixing the problem.
Well, if they stayed until they got something done, it could be a very long time because it's a political season and they don't want to give the president any credit. Meanwhile, that particular hearing was about family separations. As Democrats slam border detention centers as being concentration camps, Fox News has gotten an inside look at one of the largest ICE facilities in America.
And Griff Jenkins joins us live from Adelanto, California, with an exclusive tour that you're not going to see anywhere else. Good job, Griff.
Hey, thanks, Ainsley, Brian, and Steve. You know, you talked about Congress. Congress is appropriated for about 46,000 beds in ICE custody. Well, ICE has about 53,000 in custody across the country. The facility here at Adelanto is one of the largest, and so we went with the acting director of the LA field office, Thomas Giles, inside to have a look at what the conditions are really like. Here's what we saw. Watch. Acting Director, where are we?
We're currently in the intake processing center at the Adelanto ICE Processing Center. This facility here houses up to 1,940 detainees. After they get classified and after they get booked in by the facility, we're giving them hygiene items. They have soap, shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, toothpaste, as well as they have bed linens, socks, shoes, shower shoes, and then their uniform when they're detained here. Medical care is a top-notch priority. We have a full-time medical clinic here. One thing that we do offer here is for consulate phone calls and pro bono attorneys, it's a free phone call for the detainee.
Director, what is this area here?
We're currently in the special housing unit here. In this area, the individuals that are detained here are individuals that have committed infractions.
So that's like fighting or disciplinary.
Yeah, the most common
in custody.
Yeah, the most common infraction that's occurred here is refusing staff orders and fighting. While they're in here, they have open movement, and they have the ability to roam around the area here. We have phone calls, phones for them to use. We have books for them to use. Individuals are able to play Xbox and watch movies.
These guys are playing soccer. I presume this is the recreation yard.
Yeah, right now we're in the recreation yard, and we offer the detainees anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day, if not more, depending on the availability.
In terms of the characterizations out there, there's a big national debate, but what do you want people to know?
Well, I want people to know that when these individuals are detained here, we're giving them the care and custody that they need. We're going to do everything we can to keep the individuals safe while they're detained here.
A very different picture than what we saw on the border at the Border Patrol processing centers. These are the people that will have come from there, the overflow, or others that had criminal records that were arrested for another crime, and ICE had to go and detain them. But one thing is for sure, while lawmakers talk about trying to abolish ICE and that there are inhumane conditions inside, we not only talked to Director Giles, guys, we talked to migrants who chose to speak with me. In this case, Noel Beltran, a migrant from El Salvador, had this to say when I asked him how things are. Listen. Here at Adelanto,
right?
How do you think the conditions are?
It's great for me. It's great. I could see my family. I could hug my family. And Theo Lacey, I couldn't hug my family. They're coming from an hour and a half away, Van Nuys to Orange, and traffic and all that stuff. Half an hour, sometimes 25 minutes, 21 minutes. It'll get cut off real quick, behind the glass. Right here, I have contact with my family. I could hug my kids.
Now, guys, they have about a little over 1,700 in custody here. They're all adults over 18. The women is a separate facility, similar to the one we saw. They're just housed in a different facility to separate them. There are no children here. Any of the family separation would have happened at the border. Children are being housed at different facilities, either in a family-type unit or in individual children holding facility that's run by the Office of Refugee Resettlement under HHS. But certainly very interesting to see what's happening here at the detention facility that ICE runs, and they certainly could use more support from Congress. You'll have a chance to talk with the acting ICE director, Albence, a little bit later.
We will indeed. Hey, Griff, just a point of clarification. So the people who are being detained right there, they're being detained there until what happens?
Great question. They're being detained until their court is heard, their day in court, right? So many of these folks, in the case of Noel, he came as a child, actually had achieved his green card status, but then he had committed a crime for which he was incarcerated, and ICE had taken them after he was released from prison, and so his deportation up in air. Here on the premises, the DOJ has 6 immigration courts so they can be processing it, but they're staying here and they're in custody until their immigration status is determined by a judge. The average stay here is about 70 to 75 days, a couple, 2-3 months. Some have been here longer.
Right. 53,000 single adults are being detained.
Yeah, Griff has been on the border. He's been at the ICE facility now. Thank you so much, Griff, for giving us a glimpse.
It's an eye-opener.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right, quarter before the top of the hour, and Jillian joins us with word from the president about the mayor of New York.
That's right. So let's go ahead and tell you what's going on here. So President Trump and New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio trading jabs over water bucket attacks on the NYPD.
Probably the worst mayor in the history of New York City. He's done a bad job, and now he's running for president, and people can't even believe it. He's a horrible mayor. The policemen and women cannot stand him.
I challenge you, Donald Trump, to come to New York City, and I will debate you about what's right for New York City. He doesn't understand New York City, and when his presidency is over really soon, he will not be welcome back in New York City.
3 videos surfaced this week of people attacking cops with water. 3 people, including a gang member, were arrested but are now back on the street. A police sergeant pulls 2 kids from a hot car, and the dramatic rescue is caught on camera. Watch this.
It's okay. It's okay, guys. It's okay. We got you.
With temperatures in the 90s, the Ohio sergeant using his baton to smash a window and unlock the doors. The girls, ages 2 and 3, were okay after their parents accidentally locked them in their SUV outside Walmart. No charges were filed. A man walks away unharmed after a tire smashes into his car on the highway. Watch this insane video. A loose wheel rolling down the New Jersey highway and jumping the median. Look at this. Right here, smashing into the front of an off-duty police officer's car. He was not seriously hurt. The tire appears to be from a dump truck, so you know that's a big tire. Police are investigating. Yeah, that's a crazy video. A patriotic punishment that fits the crime. A Missouri teen caught on surveillance video stealing an American flag from a car wash. You see it right there. The owner, a veteran, posted the video on Facebook, and several people quickly identified the thief, who actually called the store to apologize. The owner then invited him out to hand out American flags to customers, and guess what? The teenager agreed. He says he wanted the young man to learn a lesson without getting arrested. Sometimes I think that that's the best way to do something like that.
He's not going to do that again.
Yep, the red, white, and blue.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Jillian.
you, Jillian.
Okay, so we all love